수요일부터 금요일 하루에 3번 7시 50분, 10시, 11시 50분에 각각 방송되고 있는 커뮤니티 게시판은 교기는 물론 커뮤니티 소식과 각종 행사들을 종합해서 보도해드리고 있습니다. 커뮤니티 게시판에 관한 문의는 전화 847-583-0191이나 시카고 kcbs1590@gmail.com으로 연락 바랍니다. 산속으로 애들을 데려다 줘야 되는데 차가 제한돼 있기 때문에 근데 하나님께서 차를 구입해 주게 하심으로 우리 아이들이 2시간에서 1시간이 줄고 또 그런 일들을 통해서 아이들이 더 행복한 은혜를 경험하게 해주신 하나님과 귀한 일들을 행하신 우리 약속과 청취자 성도님들께 감사를 드립니다. 감사합니다. 제가 11년, 이제 12년 차가 남성이 사모요. 국선까지 따지면 거의 3년, 거의 15년의 삶을 통해서 이제 아프리카에 살게 되는데 제가 이번에 한국에 와서 치료를 받으면서 어느 교회에 가서 식사를 하고 있는데요. 식사를 다 우리 아내랑 얘기하면서 일을 하고 있는데 어떤 사모님께서는 계속 쳐다보고 있는 거예요. 그래서 이 사모님께서 저한테 물어보시는 거예요. 아니 한국말 왜 이렇게 잘하세요? 한국말을 왜 이렇게 잘하세요? 그래서 아니 저 한국 사람이라고 저 한국 사람 저 고향이 목포라고 했더니 아 그러시는 거더니 또 제가 가만 놓고 있는데 진짜냐고 그냥 제가 얼굴이 지금 많이 하얘졌거든요. 얼굴이 새까매가지고 이제 거의 필리핀을 넘어 싱가포르까지 온 것 같아요. 그래서 아마 내년 정도 되면 남산 사람은 아니고 이ትዮጵ야 사람까지는 될 것 같아요. 하나님 점점 저를 현지 사람과 융화하면서 하나님의 은혜를 나누는 귀한 복된 자로 하나님께서 허락하심을 믿습니다. 제가
that my father was, so she's talking to Queen Draupadi. I have already told you that my father was very affectionate to me. So when he saw that my desire had been fulfilled by my getting Lord Krishna as my husband, in great happiness, he began to distribute to friends and relatives various kinds of gifts, such as valuable garments, ornaments, bedsteads, and sitting carpets. Lord Krishna is always self-sufficient. This is her still talking. Yet my father, out of his own accord, offered my husband, meaning Lord Krishna, a dowry consisting of riches, soldiers, elephants, chariots, horses, and many rare and valuable weapons. He presented all those to the Lord with great enthusiasm. So she continues talking. My dear queen, at that time I could guess that in my previous life I must have performed some wonderfully pious activity. And as a result, I can in this life be one of the maidservants of the house of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is this whole speech, you could say, or her speaking to Queen Draupadi, is coming from Srila Prabhupada writing in Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So you notice how she's actually stating something where she's concluding that she has performed acts of penance. And how she's able to understand this is just by witnessing the whole arrangement that's there. And she's making this observation, and her internal thought process is, I must have performed acts of penance and austerity just by virtue of the fact that I've received Krishna as my husband. My affectionate father has actually facilitated this arrangement, and then giving the whole description of the father's very charitable disposition. So he's also performing acts of charity because he's giving to the various guests all kinds of items that are very useful, such as bedsteads, carpets, ornaments, and valuable. And he does the same in terms of presenting valuables to Lord Krishna, such things that are valuable to somebody who's in the role of a Kshatriya, such as horses, elephants, soldiers, etc. So, so that's a proper way to give charity. You're giving something that's valuable, it's new, and it's very valuable. It's going to actually be in line with the person's occupation, and they can make good use of it. So that's the proper charity. Now, in effect, you could say that Queen Lakshmana is an example of one who can make this kind of statement to Queen Rukmini, because she clearly had maintained sacrificial activities, had renounced the attachment to results of such sacrifices, because otherwise she wouldn't have been in this position, and is in effect recognizing that she had performed sacrifices for the purification that the performance of such sacrifices brings to a person. So the very nature of this whole scenario that she's describing makes one understand that she performed this kind of purificatory process, these kind of acts of austerity, sacrifice, penance that brought her to this position, and that she must have done it in the correct way, which is how Krishna says that it needs to be performed, which is performing sacrifice without looking at what the result is going to be from that sacrifice. And and so she can make this kind of statement even to Queen Rukmini. I must have performed severe austerities in the past. She's, recognizing, observing, and she's sharing with, sorry, not Queen Rukmini, Queen Draupadi. So this purification is part of the path of bhakti. And it's explained by Srila Rupa Goswami in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And this struck me as kind of underlying Queen Lakshmana's statement. This is what Srila Rupa Goswami explains about this path, this purification on the path of bhakti. He says, Shanta bhaktas are of two types. So those who have a very peaceful mood in their devotion. The Atmaramas, who have attained rati for Krishna due to the mercy of Krishna and his dear devotees. And the other category are the performers of austerities who have developed firm faith in the path of bhakti, also by the mercy of devotees. So this kind of bhakti, where there's performance of austerities, allows for gradually this development of very firm faith. But it comes by the mercy of devotees assisting one. And so Srila Rupa Goswami, he's putting that as one category because that's where Lakshmana sees herself. She sees herself in that category of somebody who's performed austerities. So we can understand from Srila Rupa Goswami's explanation that that category of persons are persons who have developed very firm faith on this path of bhakti, but it's by the mercy of devotees. And of course, he gives a second or first category of how he did the definition. He contrasts it also with the Atmaramas, the persons who have developed this very steady kind of devotion for Lord Krishna. And in their case, it's also by the mercy of devotees and Lord Krishna. He calls them the Atmaramas. But notice the particular significance is just Queen Lakshmana putting herself in the category of persons who've performed austerities. That's why I'm highlighting this, the two categories that Srila Rupa Goswami brings up, but both being dependent on the mercy of Krishna and the devotees. Now, further insight is given on this tapasa shanta bhakta, because I'm seeing that there's a connection with Queen Lakshmana. The performance of austerity, having bhakti, that's this mood of great peacefulness. So insight into the performance, the practitioners of austerity is that they worship the Lord while practicing yukta vairagya, without giving up the desire for liberation. So they're performing their austerities, but they still have this desire for liberation. Since obstacles to bhakti are destroyed when you attain liberation. So in the early stages, persons who are on this path of performing austerities, they are carrying this desire for liberation. Srila Vishwanath explains that they practice with the suitable form of detachment. So there is detachment, this yukta vairagya, performing the austerities, without giving up the desire for liberation. So there's detachment, but they're still carrying a desire for liberation. So these are this category of persons performing austerities on the path of bhakti. But even though they have this desire for liberation, this does not destroy pure bhakti. You can carry on having that desire because they desire liberation from samsara. So what they'd want to be liberated from is this repeated cycle of birth and death. They're not looking for merging into the effulgence of the Lord. They're not looking for that kind of liberation. So this desire for liberation that's being carried by somebody who's doing tapasya or austerities on the path of bhakti is in the first stage of bhakti. This is the explanation given by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. When there's liberation in this body, then bhakti becomes free of obstacles. So that's carrying of the desire, this desire to be liberated. It actually is wanting to be liberated from the cycle of birth and death, and then liberation from the body does happen, meaning in the body. So the person's still in the body, but they're freed from the modes of nature and lust and anger. An example is given of the thought process for somebody who's this kind of practicing austerity on the path of bhakti, and it's from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, and Srila Rupa Goswami puts it this way. So this is how somebody thinks when they practice austerities on the path of bhakti. When will I take pleasure in living in a cave or under a tree? wearing a kopin and eating simple roots and fruits, meditating in my heart on the effulgent form of bliss and knowledge called Mukunda, who gives liberation. In this way, passing all my days and nights in a few seconds. So this is the thought process. When we were visiting in Govardhan for about 10 days, one of the regular sites was seeing persons performing austerities. So sadhus performing austerities. So clearly, they're on the path of bhakti, but they're engaging in severe austerities, like lying on the hard ground, like resting on the hard ground was a favorite one that one would see. So this, if one looks at this thought process of somebody that's practicing these kind of austerities, is that they're still wanting to take pleasure in the austerities, because it's not so easy. But you actually want to come to a point where you're taking pleasure in the austerities while meditating on the form of the Lord, Mukunda. So that's how Srila Rupa Goswami explains the thought process of somebody in that category. So the Lord is called Mukunda because he releases one from the cycle of birth and death, the samsara, and he's the giver of liberation. So he's going to allow one to actually be liberated both from that cycle and to be freed from lust, anger, and material nature. And Srila Rupa Goswami goes on to say that the performers of austerity, having received mercy from the devotees and Atmaramas, hold in the sky of their hearts the moon of bhava called Shanta. So what actually is like the valuable outcome, although there's clearly no focus on the result, but there is a certain benediction that comes, and that is that the person's practicing this kind of austerity. Through the mercy they're also receiving, that they're able to do so, and that they're trying to cultivate a desire to find those austerities pleasurable. In their hearts, they start carrying this shanta, or this peace. So that's the whole description that's given by Srila Rupa Goswami for performers of austerity, which just led me, I'm going into this because Queen Lakshmana saw herself in that category, or having performed austerities on the path of bhakti in the past. So this leads to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti stating that there's some embarrassment on the part of Queen Lakshmana as well. She's a little embarrassed because she understands that she's been giving descriptions of herself rather profusely. So because all her descriptions are about herself, and none of the other queens quite do it there, more sort of simple, just a few little things. But Queen Lakshmana opens up her heart and proceeds to be very profuse in her description of herself. And and this is because of her absorption in Lord Krishna. So that's the point, that because that's the person who's gone through that path of austerity on the path of bhakti, there's always meditation on Lord Mukunda. And indeed, some places back, she refers to Lord Krishna as Mukunda several times, because that's the giver of liberation. So persons on the path of bhakti that are practicing austerities, they generally think of Lord Krishna as Mukunda, the giver of liberation. So this is something of the description, because here she is, she's a little embarrassed, she's become aware of how she's been profusely talking about herself, giving descriptions of herself. So I'm going to read something that she's now reflecting, where she's a little embarrassed, but this is something of the description she gives of herself and the interaction with Lord Krishna. So this is just going back a couple of texts to 32. The Lord then placed me on his chariot drawn by 4 most excellent horses. Donning his armor and readying his bow sharanga, he stood on the chariot, and there on the battleground he manifested his 4 arms. So Srila Vishwanath explains that Lakshmana was saying the following. So Srila Vishwanath giving insight into the feeling, the mood. So it's as though Queen Lakshmana is talking. Assuming 4 hands, Krishna embraced me, who was very frightened, with 2 arms. He held his bow and arrows in the other 2 arms. So this is how it's how she gave a description of herself, that now she's a little bit shy, that she'd been so profuse in her explanations and her descriptions of herself. So it's thus that Queen Lakshmana speaks this statement in order to satisfy her elders. So what we read today, where she's actually saying, so this was her statement. So she makes this statement because she's reflecting and she's become a little bit embarrassed. So she says, thus by renouncing all material association and practicing austere penances, we queens have all become personal maidservants of the self-satisfied Supreme Lord. So she generalizes to all the queens that they've all performed austerities and they've all become maidservants of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, she carries on. Daruka drove the Lord's gold-trimmed chariot as the kings looked on, O queen, like small animals, helplessly watching a lion. So she's very absorbed in her description, and considering that, you know, the connection made by Srila Rupa Goswami is this carrying of this Shantaras, this very peaceful mood, you can understand that she can very peacefully give this description, very peacefully explain the details, but she's a little shy, so hence meaning, you know, she gets a little embarrassed that she's been talking about herself, and that's why she makes a particular statement where she generalizes that all us queens have performed severe austerities and we've all become maid servants of Lord Krishna. So Queen Lakshmana says the following: we 8 queens cannot control Krishna like other wives can control their husbands. And it says that she says this out of great humility. And Srila Rupa Goswami, drawing again from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, he expands on what bhakti actually is. So I've made some connections with Queen Lakshmana's statements about her performance of austerity, and I've spoken a little bit of how Srila Rupa Goswami paints that picture of performance of austerity on the path of bhakti. And here's a definition of bhakti. So just to get more insight, bhakti attracts Krishna and his associates. Bhakti is called Shri Krishna Karshini because it makes the Lord addicted to prema, love, and brings him under control along with his associates. So that's the very definition of bhakti. But here Queen Lakshmana is saying that, you know, they're like ordinary ladies can control their husbands, but they cannot control their husband. That's what they're saying. So, but because we know that they're on the path of bhakti, and according to Srila Rupa Goswami, bhakti actually makes the Lord addicted to the love of his devotees. and it brings him under their control, along with all his associates. So that's what bhakti actually does. But here, Queen Lakshmana is saying, oh, we can't control our husband. All us queens can't control our husband. So, Srila Rupa Goswami, just to try and get more insight, he further quotes, and he says, and this is Srila Rupa Goswami trying to explain something of the nature of bhakti and how it plays itself out. So he actually draws from Srimad Bhagavatam in the 11th canto in the 14th chapter, where Krishna is talking to Uddhava. So Krishna is revealing what the effect of bhakti is on him. So this is what he tells Uddhava. My dear Uddhava, the unalloyed devotional service in the form of prema bhakti given to me by my devotees brings me under their control. So he directly states what the effect is on him. This is Lord Krishna telling Uddhava that it directly brings him under the control of those who have this prema or love for him. So those engaged in mystic yoga, Shankya philosophy, pious work, Vedic study, austerity, or renunciation cannot thus control me to this extent. So this is very interesting because we're looking at this argument that Queen Lakshmana is saying that they can't control Krishna. But here's what Krishna is saying that the effect of their love has, or love from his devotees has on him. So one may make Krishna his goal or her goal if one's practicing mystic yoga. One can make Krishna his or her goal if one's practicing Sankhya philosophy. But such activities do not please Krishna as much as direct loving service, which is practiced by hearing and chanting about him and executing his mission. So that's actually what is the particular thing that attracts Krishna to somebody or really makes a person dear to Krishna, that they are hearing and chanting about him and they're executing his mission. So that's Krishna himself saying. And Srila Jiva Goswami notes that it cannot be an example of sadhana. So it's not just hearing and chanting that brings Krishna under control. Because of the statement that I've just read to you, but Krishna is brought under control only by sadhya bhakti. That bhakti that produces sadhya bhakti or prema controls him. So one has to be on the path of bhakti, but then it comes to a point where one is actually liberated while one is within the body. So sadhya bhakti, the bhakti has developed where there's actually love coming for Krishna. So it's at that time that one can control Krishna. So of course we have to question Queen Lakshmana's statement made out of great humility that they cannot control Krishna. It's not actually accurate from the point of view of what Krishna tells us about bhakti. And even though she's painted this picture of herself having been practicing austerities on the path of bhakti, we know just by the whole progression that actually there's that kind of liberation that happens. Of course, these queens are in a separate category, but I'm just painting the picture for persons that are practicing sadhana as well. So the queens of Dwarka are direct expansions of Krishna's internal Ladini Shakti potency. And so they definitely control him through their prema or love. So that was the breakdown I was able to do. Yesterday was Srila Prabhupada's disappearance. I had a little bit limited time, so this is as far as I was able to go. I hope it gives some insight into this topic. If there's some thoughts on the subject matter.
the point of that you brought out at the end is in the purport also, the comments of Srila Krishna Chakravarti Thakur, that the queens are in the category of Shakti Tattva. They're not Jiva Tattva, they're Shakti Tattva. So they're not ruled by the same. And as Shakti Tattva, their relationship with Krishna, like Krishna says, that he fully controls his energies. And then there's that relationship that you highlighted, which is very important. That pleasure potency fully controls Krishna. Krishna becomes controlled by, by the affection, loving affection, friend. So it's quite something when these personalities that are on that level, on that category, Shakti Tattvas, they express themselves with humility, like they have to go through the normal procedures that Jiva Tattvas have to go, that you have to end it. Especially the Jiva Tattvas that are in the material world, there you have to go through a process to free yourself from the material world. But the Shakti Tattvas are eternally, connected. They're eternally liberated. So they don't have to go through that procedure, but they express themselves like that. Of course, we understand that for teaching path, but yes, but when they say they have to perform austerities to obtain Krishna, then it's not the same. Like Lakshmi perform austerities, but Lakshmi is always at the lotus feet of God. So, so it's a complete different world.
But it gives one insight into the process just by understanding what the outcome can be by seeing these great personalities such as Queen Lakshmi carrying this great humility. Seeing oneself as, this is how the process is, explaining it, but knowing in fact that she actually is in a state of prema or complete love for Lord Krishna, only gives one more impetus to follow in the footsteps of such a beautiful personality. But if there's nothing else, thank you so very much for your kind attention. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.